everyone. Carlos here with the Evolve Commerce Club. Today we're doing something different, and we are at the RTS event here in London, inside our partners booth, Cloud and Commerce. This is the first interview of the day, and I'm with someone that I respect and who's an Evolve member. I'm joined by Gordon Robson, serial entrepreneur from the UK and currently building Quantalingo, focused on voice AI. Mr. Robson?
Hi, good to meet you, Carlos. Again.
In person?
In person. Makes a change from being on Zoom or whatever. Yeah.
So let's dive straight in. Gordon, you come from telco. You built, sold companies 4 times. So let's do just some reality check. From where you sit, building in this space, what are people getting completely wrong about AI today?
I think the first thing I'd say is that it's staggering how many people you would expect to kind of know something about AI or understand AI just don't. The kind of lack of knowledge, I won't say ignorance, just the lack of knowledge it kind of amazes me. And I think that the biggest challenge that companies like us who are focused on AI face in dealing with sort of selling our products to companies in the UK is there is a fear, a lack of understanding and fear. You know, they kind of think, well, it's going to take away jobs. We might put money into something and it's going to be replaced in a few months' time. And because obviously it's all moving so quickly.
Yeah.
And they don't really kind of understand how it can actually work for and help and make their businesses much more efficient. And also, to be honest, it is the future. You know, there is no point in hiding from AI because it's here, it's moving very quickly and it isn't going to go away. You know, the genie's out of the bottle.
So when you say that we have a lack of understanding, can you elaborate a bit on that and why? Because, for example, a couple of years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, we already spoke about artificial intelligence and voice technologies. And Amazon, I remember they were trying to do something about it, but it seems like, as you're saying, the genie is out of the bottle now. So if you could elaborate on the lack of understanding, but also why voice and why now? Why do you think now? Why do you see an opportunity for voice technologies now?
Okay, first of all, the reason why now is because the technology has advanced so much that actually we can do a lot of clever things that, to be honest, even for us, were, you know, sort of sci-fi a year ago. I mean, for example, one thing that we can now do very, very effectively is clone voices. And that was something that, you know, not that long ago, a company called 11 Labs kind of focused on, and they were the ones that could do that. Now, I mean, we can take a 20-second clip of someone talking and very, very, very convincingly clone their voice. And there are great applications for that. I mean, for example, with Quantalingo, we have an AI agent which is live 24/7, answering questions that customers or investors or whatever might have about Quantalingo. And it's voiced by my partner, Robin McIntyre, who's the company's CTO. And it also operates in around about 120 different languages, instantly recognizing those languages. So therefore, we have a situation where you've got something that's available 24/7. Someone can call, they can talk whenever they want, they can ask whatever questions they want. They don't have to make an appointment. And ultimately, you know, the thing about why voice is people want to talk. You know, they don't really want to type. I mean, naturally people talk. So the move is towards voice. I think one of the other issues is, and I mean, people will be aware of this from probably experiences of talking to AI, is that still most companies do what is called speech to text to speech,
right.
which creates latency, it's a delay. So, you know, you talk to an AI and then you've got to wait for the AI to respond. And the reason for that is because basically what they say is being converted to speech, and then it's being converted back to voice again. Whereas what we have done is we've really, we think, mastered direct speech to speech. So we have got a really, really good sort of flow. So it actually increasingly sounds like you're talking to a sort of normal person. So it's getting better and better all the time.
Right. And how far are you guys? So you guys have the technology already running, or is it like in stealth mode? Or
no, it's running. It's now running. I mean, as I said to you, the first prototype we put together was basically for investors, for customers, for sort of, quizzes and Quantalingo. We've also got a highly personalized real-time voice service. I mean, we call it the Oracle, basically. And effectively, people can have a conversation with this, ask them all sorts of questions. It knows them by name. It has memory, so it remembers previous conversations. And actually, in terms of the retail opportunities, because obviously we're a retail technology show, I know there are a lot of companies here who are focused on sort of B2B AI experiences. What we can do is we can help retail companies and commerce companies with their consumer interactions. So for example, a customer would be able to go online, talk to the company, the AI agent would know exactly who they are, would remember their previous conversations. So I give you an example. You look at something on Amazon and it will send you a message, say, you showed an interest in this. Are you still interested? Would you be interested in something similar? That can now all be done by voice. So effectively, and I think it's much more effective. As I said, people want to talk.
Tell me about because like when we're talking about voice, and we have actually, just to give some context, how we met. We're building an international advisory board, and I sent you a message because I had an opportunity for this international advisory board, and you got interested. We spoke about the club, and eventually, it wasn't a fit for our client. But then we are here and speaking about what you're doing. So in their case, they're serving banks, right? And their AI voice technology has already some really solid cases for customer service, debt collection, And I think like when we look at what you're building, voice is certainly one of the technologies that are going to be adopted. And the question I have is more like in terms of going to market and verticals that are going to adopt this sort of voice technology. So I'm curious about perhaps your go-to-market. How do you envision your company going to market? Is it through strategic relationships that you had in the past? So maybe you can have some stronger POCs and then scale this. Is it to a specific vertical? Can you elaborate on that?
Okay. I'll give you an example. At the moment, we're working with a US-based healthcare insurance company. And at present, if you go in the US and many parts of the world to see a doctor, see a hospital, the first thing they do is they call the insurance company to check your insurance, okay? And typically, those calls are answered by human agents. You've got long waits, it's very inefficient, it's pretty irritating for the human agents because they probably get a bit of stick from someone who's been waiting, okay? So what we have done is we put in place a clever, sort of carefully prompted AI, and that's one of the key things about AI actually is, it's the curation, it's the prompts that actually make it work. So basically it asks all the right questions, it processes all the information, then it passes at this stage to a live agent who effectively decides whether or not the claim is approved. Ultimately, we'll interface directly with the back-end system, so the whole thing will happen automatically. So in terms of sort of where this is going, it will, replace jobs that are done by humans, but it will replace a lot of sort of, to be quite blunt, mind-numbing, jobs that people don't really want to do, freeing those people up to do, more clever things. It also, from a consumer experience, is much better, And I think one of the issues until now is that people have, found that sort of talking to an AI agent is kind of not a great experience. Because basically, as I said, the latency, it doesn't understand, et cetera. Whereas now I think we've got to a point where actually, it's improving all the time, but the experience is good. And of course, also what you should always do is have a backup. So if the AI is struggling, then it will transfer you directly to a human. So, the experience remains remains, I think, positive.
Yeah. But what are the typical barriers of adoption, or maybe, okay, this is interesting, but where do they typically, is it about security that they are concerned, or concerns, or well?
I think first of all, as I said, there's a lack of understanding. Is this really, as good? And we'll demonstrate or say, yeah, okay, this is impressive. Then they will think, well, is it going to be replaced? Is something better going to come along? And we say, look, yeah, I mean, our service has been updated constantly. But I think there is still a general sort of reluctance. I mean, I've talked to other companies, I've talked to a couple of companies here in this space as well, and they say they experience the same issues. It's like, well, maybe it's a bit early, maybe we don't really know, and it's just trying to persuade them, to get. And I'll tell you the sort of thing that doesn't really help is, for example, this weekend in one of the British newspapers, there was a story about something like 1,000 NHS receptionists using AI to make appointments, and the experience wasn't good. And the newspaper kind of basically, I think, tried to trick the AI, really tried to sort of put it through its paces. And I think, that doesn't really help. I think, and they didn't have a human backup so in other words, if the AI wasn't understanding what the person was asking and what they were saying, then it should have transferred the call to a human, and it didn't do that.
Yeah.
So I think, I think companies are still struggling. I think they think it's still, a bit early, especially in the UK. I mean, to be honest, UK companies typically, I think, are much slower adopters than US companies or companies in other,
Well, I think in Europe in general, of course, I'm being just. This is let's say, a gross comparison to the US, but when you compare continents, the US traditionally has always been more aggressive, right? Towards,
yeah, completely.
Than Europe. Europe being very traditional, and but again, I think it was Bill Gates who said something about crime, and like society is going to evolve no matter what, because crime. And I give you some examples in Brazil, how voice, and they're already using clone voices to impersonate someone.
Yeah.
Or bots calling you, and so those things are interesting because it's change is coming, right? Regardless, and so I think it's going to come from consumers somehow.
The other thing I'd say on that is that change is coming much quicker than people realize. I mean, to be honest, I'm amazed at what our tech team have actually done, even just in the last 4 months. It's moving very, very quickly. It's interesting. I mean, there was a sort of a TV drama here in the UK, the BBC drama called The Capture.
Right.
And they've just finished the 3rd season, which kind of focused on, AI and what they call correction, which was basically how you could use AI to manipulate images. In the end of the 2nd series, which was, I think, 2-3 years ago, they had a scene where the UK Home Secretary was sitting at home watching himself being interviewed in effectively what was BBC Newsnight, but it was an AI clone. And at that time, we thought, wow, that's amazing. To be quite honest, we could do that now, and that's how fast it's moving. And people just don't really understand, and I think they're scared. I keep coming back to the fact they don't understand, they're scared, and they're therefore reluctant to sort of jump until they're totally sure that they're jumping the right way.
Yeah, how do you get updated? How do you, because I mean, there's so much change, as you're saying, right? And looking at, let's say you're more experienced, but still looking very good.
All right,
a bit more senior than I am.
Okay, all right.
And how do you then, in the current stage of the world, and with so much change, how do you think you get prepared for what's coming? Like, I have 2 daughters, 13 and 11 years old. I think the world is very different nowadays than when it was when I was at their age, where the internet was
totally
just
different. Yeah.
starting. We had ICQ and whatnot, and then chat was very different. Nowadays, like social media is prevalent. So, what's your best advice for someone who's maybe in their 60s, and someone also who's young, and how to prepare for everything that's coming?
it's all part. I mean, the thing is, I've always been at the forefront of what's happened. I mean, I was, one of the first people in the UK to get involved in sort of mobile texting. I mean, just as a kind of an aside, I mean, I remember sitting in a restaurant in the Philippines in the late 80s and with a guy I was doing some business with there, and people all around were sort of on their phones doing this, and I said, what are they doing? And he said, they're texting. I said, what's texting? And he got someone over and showed me, because I mean, SMS texting actually started in the Philippines.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people don't know that, but anyway. And so I came back and we did a deal with Vodafone, and we basically, with the company I had then, and I've always kind of like tried to be at the forefront of what's happening, with web stuff as well. I did a lot with the iPad when that first came out. And it's kind of like, one of the strengths of anticipating trends and staying ahead of where the world's going is it kind of positions you well, but at the same time, and I've seen this with everything I've done, you've got people like, really? And it can be quite a hard sell because other people don't kind of necessarily have the same vision, they're kind of slow in the uptake. But having sort of wandered a bit there and answering your question, I think you've just got to be aware, and aware of the change. I mean, the change is so quick. I mean, there's a lot of talk about when is AGI coming, artificial general intelligence. There's just disagreements among the sort of tech titans as to when it's going to come. I think the person who's probably more on top of all of this than anyone is probably Elon Musk. I kind of, I think you've got to take note of what he says, because I think, these people actually know a lot more than they're telling us.
Yeah.
So they really have got,
Yeah, I think you mentioned something, and I agree. Like I try to follow what they're talking about and try to have different views, but I completely agree with what you're saying. But something that struck me that you just mentioned, like you were in the Philippines, and I think it's maybe the word is staggering at that how sometimes Europe. I'm an international, so I tend to be curious by nature. So when I come to the UK, compare it to Denmark and Brazil, how things are evolving. So for example, in Brazil, like the banking scene is so advanced compared to what you would see in Germany. And I think emerging countries like Philippines, they tend to leapfrog a lot of what happens in traditional economies and established economies, right?
I think, it's interesting you say that. I think a lot of people in Europe kind of still look at like the Philippines and Malaysia as being third world countries. I mean, I remember back in, I think it was about 2008, 2009, being in KL, Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and was absolutely staggered that the whole of the center of KL had free high-speed Wi-Fi. And it was like, even in the UK then, we were kind of struggling with wireless routers. So yeah, you're right. I think, and also what doesn't help in Europe, to be honest, is the whole EU and over-regulation that just, just doesn't help.
But hopefully that is,
hopefully,
I hear it's changing. They want to create a whole block here.
Yeah. I think the territory that I haven't visited for a long time, I really would love to go back to, is China.
Right.
I think China is way ahead of where in the West we think it is.
For sure.
And I think it would be really fascinating to go and see exactly what's happening there. And you don't know. I mean, is the US a bit wary, a bit scared of what's happening in China? I don't know. I mean, look at DeepSeek and how effectively it kind of suddenly rocked OpenAI. But as I said, it's all moving so fast, and you can't ignore it.
Gordon, we're gonna close.
Okay.
So we're at a retail show. So looking at the next 6 months, maybe the next 2 years, what do you think what's gonna change in how we interact with brands because of voice and technology, voice and AI?
I think, the whole thing about when you go online, press 1 for this, 2 for this, 3 for this, which is really irritating. I mean, that's dead. It's completely dead.
Right.
And companies have been playing with voice recognition, which up until now has not really necessarily been particularly good enough. But I think what you are going to find is a very rapid move for retailers and commerce companies dealing with their customers to entirely voice interactions. So, whether it's texting, whether it's press 1, press 2, whatever, the whole thing is going to become much slicker. And I think that the companies that actually adopt this first are going to be the winners, because the reality is, people are fundamentally sort of, take the path of least resistance. And if it's kind of easier dealing with this company where, it's much slicker than it is with that company, particularly in customer service. And I think that's a big area where there's an issue. That's an area that Amazon have really got right. I mean, Amazon's customer service is great, and I think it's part of the reason why they sell so much. So in answer to your question, they've got to move towards full voice interaction and dealing with their consumers at every level. Otherwise, they will fall behind and lose customers.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, Gordon Robson. Gordon, if anyone wants to reach out, you're also a senior advisor. You advise companies on their process of getting sold. And
sure.
So what's the best way to reach out?
Basically, you can email me, which is gordon@gordonrobson.com, and you'll see on the site, actually, there's a lot about my background. Right. Or via LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Gordon.
Great.
Take care.
Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.